G'day, Stu here from UAVfutures, and today, well, it's Sunday, so back with another question and answer video, but this time actually two little changes I want to talk about. So pretty much what these question and answer videos are, I want to answer the questions from the community, so if you've got a question, drop it down in the comments below so that I can answer it on the next episode of the Q&A. But why is this one different? Well, number one, now I've got a kid, so I might have to cut this one short, or I might have to run out or something like that, because I've got a little baby daughter in there in the other room. So yeah, things might be a little bit different. And the second thing, I think these videos are a great opportunity. Sometimes I get stuff on the channel that I want to show you guys, but it's not really a whole video worthy. So I might be able to show a few little products here and there that I think are really cool that I want to very quickly show you, but it saves me making a whole video, because it might just be like today I want to show you guys a battery checker and just a little camera that I think you guys might be interested in. But I don't want to make a whole video about it because it's not 100% exciting. Anyway, enough rambling. Let's jump right in and answer some of the questions from you guys. So the first one, coming from Lacroix. And these names, I'm so bad at people's names, but I'm just going to say Lacroix. Anyway, do you have any good ideas for what to do with old 3S Lipo? There's a ton of battery questions in this one as well, because I seem to have a lot of Lipo questions. Do you have any good ideas for what to do with old 3S Lipos? I'm going to switch to 4S soon once I can afford more batteries, but it seems like such a waste to just off them. Yeah, there is some things you can do. If you're really feeling up to it, you can build some, you can sort of take the cells apart and you can build some higher batteries, but I don't recommend doing that. Something I've been using, I've been saving them for some other types of builds, or if some of my lower power builds, or if you want to give them to some other people, that's a great thing you can do. You can give them off to other pilots or let other people fly them when you take them out to the field. And then also, if you make some LED gates up as well, a lot of LEDs run on 12 volts, so maybe you can make some LED gates, use your old Lipos to charge them and power them up as well. So that's some of the suggestions that I can think of. So this one's from Gary Luke, well I can say that one. G'day Stu, love the show. For a newbie, how can you identify what amp ESCs go with which motors? So this one's a really easy one to answer actually, and pretty straightforward. Whenever you're going to go and buy a motor, you can check on the spec sheet, and there should be somewhere like total max amp draw or something like that. There'll be a little spec sheet that comes with your motors, or you can look it up online somewhere, and that should usually tell you how many amps one of those motors is going to pull, and then you pretty much match that with an ESC. Now keep in mind that ESCs have a burst rating and a constant rating, so you don't want the max amp draw to be more than the burst amp rating. So if maybe the max amp draw was 35 amps for an ESC, 35 amps for a motor, make sure you've got a 35 amp burst ESC, because and then it might be like a 25 constant or something like that on the ESC side of things, because you don't need to worry about going over that normal constant range too much, because you're not going to be at full throttle 100% of the time. That's just for that little burst rating. So yeah, you can definitely look it up on the specs guide. But most of the things, I would say either like a 25 or a 30 amp ESC is probably going to be enough for most motors. Most high powered motors, maybe 35 ESCs, and some of the weaker motors, or I guess the ones that don't have the super powerful magnets, like the cheaper ones, like the Racer Star 2205, 2300 kVs, I know that that'd probably be fine, even on a 20 amp constant ESC. So yeah, I know a lot of people have success with them. Anyway, moving on. This one from Simon White. What flight controller do you recommend to a beginner? I'm new to building race quads. Probably there'd be two that I really recommend. I know Trevor's, but I haven't tried it yet, but I really want to. Grumpy Trev, you know, you guys should maybe know him. I fly with him quite a lot. He's been recommending this new Betaflight flight controller. I'll link it down below, but apparently the OSD is amazing, and I know that I think that's what they're also using in the new versions of the Armaton Chameleon. I don't know if you can see that in the new versions of the Chameleon that they're building. So yeah, I think it's just a really straightforward, easy to use flight controller. And then the other one that I've found useful, that's one that I've put in, where's my twig? That's something that I've got in this build right here. Actually, I'll show off this build because I also built this little bad boy, but I haven't flown this yet because of being pretty busy. In here, there's an all-in-one flight controller. It's got your VTX, OSD, and your flight controller in there as well. Makes it super easy to wire up and just very, very clean. And the reason I'd recommend that one, even though there's small solder pads, so it might be difficult for a beginner, excuse me, but it means you don't have to find a way to put your OSD in here and then hook it up to your flight controller and then hook that up to your VTX. It's all in one, so that can be very, very useful. I'll link that down below as well if you guys want to find out where to get one of those. I think it's like it's got a really weird name, like the VG. It's got a little picture of a dinosaur on it anyway. UAV, okay, so Jaden Barnes, UAV Futures, I'm 13 and just starting to get into FPV, and I've got 3 questions for you. Well, Jaden, welcome to the hobby. Awesome thing that you can be doing. I wish I found this stuff when I was 13 years old. Number 1, where do I purchase my batteries from? Well, that's Hobby. I find Hobby King is pretty good if I want them relatively soon because they seem to have cheap batteries. Sometimes I do get some of the more expensive ones if I'm really desperate or want, I guess, a really high C-powered battery. And then sometimes I do order from places like Banggood, but you've got to be aware it's going to take a long time for international shipping with Lipos. Second question, when do you think you'll be doing a tour of your workshop? Probably, I don't know. Things are pretty busy. I want to get a heap of content on the channel, and especially juggling like family life and now being a dad. So that's probably on the lower priorities. There's a lot of things, a lot of exciting things that I want to show you guys, but it's definitely on the cards. And it is something I want to do. I think it's just finding a space to fit that in there and juggling it with the rest of the stuff on the channel and my family life. And the last one, will you be doing a tour? And third question, do you think you'll ever be they're ever going to ban? I think it says banned FPV, but I think it says ban FPV. Look, I don't know. Some places in the world might make it illegal to fly, and some places, you know, that's a bit of a hard one to answer. So I definitely think it'll be banned in some places, but I think there'll be a lot of places in the world you'll still be able to fly very, very freely. Anyway, moving on, this might be a good spot. This is where I want to show you guys some of the 2 little things that I want to show you this week that I didn't think were worthy of making a video. And I'll link both these down below anyway. So the first one is this little battery checker, and look, it's just a small upgrade, but it's going to make a massive difference for me because I'm so used to using one of these. I'm sure you guys have all used these. They're super cheap. I've had this one for years, really, really reliable. But it tells you, you know, you plug it in, it says how many cells, then it says all, then it says your voltage, then it says your cell voltage, and it flashes them on the screen. And look, it can take it, look, it maybe takes a few seconds, but sometimes I find it a little bit annoying. If maybe say I think I've damaged one of the cells and you plug it in and you've got to wait for this thing to cycle through to tell you what it's at. That's why I love this little bad boy. Now this is an ISDT little battery checker. These guys are absolutely awesome. I'll link them down below anyway, and I know that they've made some fantastic chargers in the past, but the reason I love this, I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this, but I simply plug it in if I can get this around the right way. Let's see how we go. Nope. 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 Oh, there we go. Last way. Well, at least you can't blow it up by plugging it in backwards. Anyway, but once you plug it in, I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this. I don't know if this will even focus, but you plug it in and it comes up straight away, and then it tells you all your voltages, all your cells straight there, straight away. And it's got a little graph so you can see exactly how much charge is in each cell. So I love that it's instantaneous. That's probably going to save me a lot of time, especially if I'm doing some parallel charging on batteries. I can just plug that in, find out straight away what all their cells are like, rather than waiting for it to cycle through. So that's a big one. I'll definitely be using that quite a lot, so I was pretty happy when that turned up. And the second one, this is a tiny little RunCam Swift camera. I'll flash some pictures up on the screen, and I think this is absolutely tiny. It's probably only going to weigh a few grams, and that's going to be perfect for some of your smaller micro builds where it's still really important. It's like the same features of a full-sized Swift, but this is just the micro Swift, so absolutely tiny. I don't know if you can get these or not. If you can, I'll link it down below, but yeah, definitely a very, very cool little camera, so that's going to be fun to put that in a little build where every single gram and space is an absolute premium. Moving on with the question and answers. This one from Eloy Bazin. My wife's laughing at me trying to pronounce the names. Stu, when placing the receiver antennas and VTX antennas, is it okay for both of them to be placed together in the back or keep them separated? Also, should the receiver antennas be as straight as possible, or can you have them bend a little along the arms? Love the channel, keep up the good work. Well, so glad you're loving the channel because I love making this stuff for you guys. I would say, look, some people are going to get a bit upset when I say this, but I'm going to talk about best practice and practical practice. That sounds weird, but pretty much best practice would say try to keep those antennas separated, so you don't want to mix your VTX antenna. You don't want it too close to your receiver antenna, your 2.4 antenna. But in reality, I put them sometimes, you know, like let's have a look at this build again. They're kind of a little bit close. So here's my antenna, my receiver antennas. Here's my FPV antenna. So look, they're a little bit close. It might interfere with it a little bit, but in the type of flying that I do and the track flying that I do, You know, remember, I'm not pushing this stuff to the outer limits where that really makes a difference. I'm just doing track flying, flying around trees, you know, not really more than not too far away. I find that works really well for me. And the other one, the other part that you mentioned, is it best to have them straight? Yeah, most people say absolutely you should have them straight. You definitely shouldn't have anything inside the carbon because you don't want to be blocking and you don't want any RF interference. But yeah, you should try to keep them straight, but I've seen plenty of them where they're bent up and they're still working. And look, you might get some more fail-safes, and this is where I talk about best practice is to have them straight. But I know plenty of times when I'll keep flying, even when they're, you know, chopped off or wrecked, it doesn't have to be perfect. I think a lot of people out there are going to offer some other advice and, you know, all these other things. They're more like, I guess, like armchair pilots or something that talk all the best stuff and what you should be doing. But in reality, if you go out and it's working for you and the type of flying that you do, even if it's not set up perfectly, but you're still having a great time and it's still working well for you, I think that's really the main goal of all this. So look, if they're not 100% straight, don't be too stressed, but you know, try to do best practice where practical. That was a long-winded answer, but yeah, that's probably how I'd sum it up. Alrighty, so this one from Evan Baton. Hi Stu, cool to see all the stuff you're getting out for us. Keep up the good work. I have a question for you. Where do you think the battery situation is going? So here's another battery question. Is more and more people getting into 5 and 6S batteries nowadays, and what are you using? Cheers and happy flying. You know what? I think this is I'm tossing and turning what I sort of thought was possible, I think, when it comes to what sort of batteries to use. For a long time, I was like, yeah, I'm smashing these 4Ss. Let's get some 5Ss, and I definitely do want some 5Ss, and I have a bunch down there. It's just about building the right monster quad for them. But when it comes to racing and everyday FPV racing, I would say 90% of the pilots out there who fly on 4S definitely they're not making a full use of 4S, so there's definitely not any use for them to go to 5S. Yes, you'll get some crazy straight line speeds or some big punch outs, but most of the time, I know for me anyway, my skills aren't ready to really jump up to a 5S. I've still got a lot more that I can use and learn from a 4S and some of my 4S machines. So for me and my flying, I still want to try out 5S, and I do think that that's where it's going to go in the upper, like the best of the best. But most pilots are probably going to be using 4S for their regular flying or everyday flying at races. And then in terms of 6S, I don't even know if there's any pilots in the world that can really race really well on 6S, because that stuff is just absolutely crazy. And those batteries cost more as well, so that's something you need to factor in. Alrighty, so Ice Wolf, I don't know why I said it like that. Hey Stu, just wondering if it's worth buying name brand, another lipo question, name brand high C lipos like FMR or Turnigy graphene, or cheap no-name high-C lipos like OC Day. I think there's a bit of, I think when it comes to buying batteries, look, I've got some Turnigy graphenes and they are amazing, but they're also super expensive. And I love flying with them, but it's a lot of money. And I've also got some of the OC Day ones, and look, they're okay. They're nowhere near as good as the graphenes. My advice would be to talk to a lot of people and try to find that middle ground. If you think of like a bell curve or something like that, or a graph of how your batteries go in price versus performance, most of the time the more expensive ones are going to perform better, like the Turnigy graphenes, and the cheaper ones that they're going to be a lot cheaper but perform a lot worse. Try and find some middle ground. So some you're comfortable with paying the price. Don't buy super expensive, but don't buy super cheap, and I think you're going to get the best value for money. And when I buy batteries, that's probably what I'll be buying most of the time, is that middle ground, because look, you crash and wreck batteries all the time. Unless you're doing it for a profession like Night Fury or Bull Buffett or something like that, someone where you really need to win those races, I would say just get your value for money's worth. That's my advice anyway. Marco Robberg. Hi Stu, I'm from Germany. I'm watching your videos for a few months now and I really love your channel. Thanks very much. I'm getting into FPV for a few weeks now and I want to know, do you balance your props or do you use it stock? Thanks for the great content. Prop balancing. Look, I've had a lot of props. I even have a prop balancer that I bought somewhere. And this is something you guys now, if you're into the hobby, you don't understand what a nightmare prop balancing used to be. You used to have to get them, you'd be shaving them down, putting little bits of glue or electrical tape on there, trying to get them perfect. You take your props out, they're balanced beautifully, your craft would fly average because it didn't have beta flight back in the day. Then you'd have one crash, that'd snap and it was ruined. So you'd spend a lot of time prepping your quad for one smooth flight. Nowadays, I crash so often that I just stick on that like default stock props. I don't do any balancing, nothing like that, and they work fine. So if you're getting some oscillations and you've got fresh props on, that's where you might have some issues with your quad. But most of the time, yeah, just stick on normal props. You don't need to balance them nowadays at all, which is I'm really grateful for that. A bit of a throwback to the past, actually, there. Okay, this one's from East TN Scott. I've asked this question before, but I've not had anyone answer. Okay, sorry, there is a lot of questions on here. I'm trying to figure out how's the easiest or best way to reposition the FPV camera after a crash in the field and the angle gets moved. Do people just guess, or do they mark a place on the side for the 30 degrees or whatever? Or you just look through your goggles and know what you're looking, I'm paraphrasing here, know what you're looking for in an upward angle. My advice would try to be make it so when you do crash, we're obviously talking about when you crash your FPV camera, sometimes it can come down and it can really mess up your flying experience. It can make your quad feel off because your horizon is not where you're used to it being. And I would say, if your quad doesn't have a good camera mount design, which is sort of what would happen on my GT2, I just taped it up. So I never really had a set angle. I'd just tape it up and like glue it in and make sure that it couldn't move. I'd put it to what I really liked it at, and then just permanently set it in that place. So that's my advice right there. So just tape it up and see what you can do. Alrighty, moving on. We're killing the questions today, a lot quicker. Pico Droid. Hi Stu, I see FPV racers generally use goggles instead of monitors. Can you discuss some kind of key differences, the pros and the cons between the two? If you have any recommendations for FPV monitors, that would be great. Thanks, and I love your channel. Yeah, this is probably a really good question. So thanks so much for asking this, because that's a massive thing. I think I left a pizza in the oven. Is it burnt? Semi. Okay. All right. Anyway, oops, I left a pizza in the oven. But there'll be a good lunch. Hopefully it's not too burnt. Oh, and I forgot to stick the garlic bread in. Righty, anyway, jumping back to the difference between headset goggles and, I guess, Fat Sharks, or, you know, your goggle styles. The difference is, the big headsets, they have a much more immersive field of view, usually a much brighter screen, and much more immersive, and almost like it fills up the entire screen and you can look around. But that's not always the best thing when it comes to FPV racing, because the reason I like the Fat Sharks, or the Onways, which I can really recommend, I'll link them down below as well. They're some of the best goggles that I've ever seen, and I would fly with them if I wasn't so used to my Fat Sharks. You sometimes need a little bit smaller vision, or you don't want all that extra distracting stuff, because when it's really zoomed in, I find it's much easier to focus and fly around. So that's probably the biggest difference. One, the big box style, yeah, they look better, but they're harder to fly. And that's why most racing pilots tend to use the smaller Fat Shark style, because it really hones in their vision of what they're looking at. You don't need to look around the screen at all, and it actually makes it a lot easier to fly fast and hit those gates. Alrighty, moving on. This one's from Jerry Davenport. Hey Stu, I just watched your Earth, Fire, Air, Water frame for kicks. How long? Oh, this is like, I think this is the first video I've ever done. I might have linked it last week or something. But in there, I've got my dog Charlie, and he's asking, how long have you had Charlie? Does he ever go with you on weekend flights? Has he ever been hit by a 5-inch quad? My dog scares me around my quads. I don't want him to get hit, but the dummy just won't leave it alone. Happy flying. Well, Jerry, Charlie has come. My dog he's a brown lab. He has come with me on some of my flights, and he does chase the quad, so it's always a bit of a juggling act. I'm definitely paranoid about him getting hit, because look, a prop could really slice you up. He loves chasing around some of the little things, like here we go, like I've got this little Pico owl that I can't wait to show you guys soon. He does love chasing around things like this, and he would chase around the bigger ones, but I tend to try to keep him away from it, because I don't want him to get hit. So on weekend flights, he doesn't really come with me, but around the house, he loves chasing these little ones, the ones where it's not really going to hurt him too much, if he happens to jump up and give it a little bite. Lucas, how do I motivate my friends to get into the hobby? This is what I tried to do when I had no one to fly with. I was like showing all my friends, like showing them YouTube videos, showing them everything, and almost wanting to build them a quad, because I loved it so much and wanted someone to fly with. And my advice is, jump on Facebook and find people who are already interested in the hobby. It's too much work to try to motivate someone else, and if they don't love it as much as you do, it's going to be a bit of a pain, and you're going to be wanting to go. This happened to me in the past. I'd want to go out. I want to go flying all the time, and I'd have some friends that are like, yeah, it's okay, and you're kind of drip feeding them, trying to keep them excited, and it just wasn't always the best. But now I've got people who love flying as much as I do, like Grumpy Trev and Pezzy D, who are like out every single weekend. It's so much better to find people who are already into flying. I know that's a bit of a cop-out answer, but my advice, it can be really difficult to try to get other people into the hobby just find those people who are already flying. So things like Reddit is a great place, Reddit Multicopter. There's heaps of Facebook groups. I think Multi-GP's probably got some chapters near you. So that's my advice, find those people who are already flying. And you're probably going to learn a lot from them as well. So it's not just you teaching your friends, you're actually making some new friends that have a whole bunch of knowledge that you can tap into as well. Red 5 FPV, cake or pie? This one has nothing to do with FPV, but it did make me laugh. Well, I'd probably say pie, and I don't know if this is different in the US or in America, but versus in Australia, we have these things and we call them meat pies, and they're really common here. If you said, I'm just going to the server station, which we call the servo, I'm just going to go to the servo and can you get me a meat pie? It's pretty much like this little meat pie with some mince in there, some which you'd call ground beef mince sort of stuff, and we eat it. It's really common here, but I don't know if that's common in the rest of the world. So I don't know if lots of places have meat pies or not. We don't have pumpkin pies or anything like that, but most of our pies are usually savoury, which you guys probably think is pretty gross, but you know, they're actually kind of nice. So Kelly Perry, have you ever thought about getting a machine shop with a water jet and a 3D printer and developing your own line of products? Oh, the baby's crying. I wonder if I'm going to have to get up here. Oh, it stopped. Maybe it doesn't like the question and answer. But in terms of getting a water jet, and that's probably way too much money for me to invest and to start working on some stuff. 3D printing some stuff? Absolutely. That sounds like a lot of fun, and I'd love to get into that hobby. I actually have a really cool 3D printer in a big box at my in-laws. I just don't have the space or the time to set it up at the moment. So the dream is one time when I have a proper studio, a proper workplace to have it set up where I can do some printing. But at the moment, there's just no space, no time to use that. So the house is really small, and running UAVfutures, working full-time, and being a dad, there's no real time for some 3D printing. Okay, so Colton Mallow, yep. Do you like the Eachine Wizard better than the 99 budget quad build and the upgraded version? So I've got my Wizard here. And oh, I should say too, I sent off the winner. I think it was Dave O. Johnson or David Johnson. There's a link anyway in the $99 video because I know a lot of people are asking who won that one. But the Wizard, I don't have the $99 one to show you anymore. But the Wizard, is it better than the upgraded version? No, I definitely think you can build a better quad than the Wizard with the guide that I had, and I'll link that video up here. But the reason the price difference is because you've got to pay someone to build this. So instead of doing that, you can invest that money into that $99 build video. Instead of paying someone else, use that on the products you can put there. And you're going to end up with a much better quad anyway than the Wizard. The Wizard's still great, but I do think you can build your own better for cheaper. And then I think this is the last question from Quadroto. Hey Stu, I love your channel and your energy. Thanks mate. I always trust your opinions and reviews. Anyway, I'm just curious if you ever went back to the QX7 after your review. I have one and I absolutely love it, probably as much as you love your Evolution, but have only flown with it a handful of times. If you've taken it out again, is there anything good or bad that has become apparent the more you fly with the QX7? Have a good day. When it comes to the QX7, I think a lot of people are like, Stuart, it's a better radio, you should be using that. Why aren't you using that? You know, I think a lot of people don't understand why I fly with my Turnigy Evolution, which is down there. And for me, it's just about the feel when I'm actually holding the radio, how it feels in my hand. Look at the Turnigy Evolution, it does feel a little bit cheaper. It definitely doesn't have the nice features that the QX7 has. It doesn't run OpenTX, it doesn't do all this special stuff. But for me, it's all about the feel and the gimbal and how easy it is to set up and get flying. The QX7, it's a better radio, and if it feels more comfortable for you, definitely use that. They're both fantastic entry-level price radios that are going to take you a long way. Hey Charlie, the dog's just walked in here. That are going to take you a long way. So there's nothing wrong with either of them. The only thing that annoyed me with the QX7 was trying to charge the battery because you couldn't just plug it in. So, but other than that, look, if I didn't use my Turnigy Evolution or I happened to lose that, I would jump over to the QX7 straight away. It's just for me, flying with my thumbs, as thumbing it, I find I'm getting confused here. I'm finding the Evolution is the radio for me, so that's the one that I really like. But if you use the QX7, that's still an awesome radio as well. That it's even more feature-packed. Anyway, that was the last question. Hope you guys liked that. If you've got some questions for the next Q&A, definitely drop them down below because this is a segment I really like doing. Really like giving back to the community and answering some of your questions, and it's a great opportunity to show some of these things like this battery checker and that sort of stuff. But other than that, subscribe for more FPV related content. I think I'm going to go and eat that pizza, which is probably burnt in the oven. And as always, happy flying. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Definitely subscribe if you're new to the channel and check out these videos. And I'm also going to leave a little link here to my Patreon page because I've got some fantastic Patreon supporters and I like to give back to them as well. So if you want to join the UAVfutures family, there's things like bonus Velcro straps, little bundles of FPV goodies and things like that that also get sent out. Anyway, happy flying.